Now, last night on NRL 360, we stepped through the backstory to the Canberra Raiders releasing George Williams from his 3-year contract. Williams posted this statement to social media while we were on air, disputing the version that James Hooper was putting forward on the show, which also appeared in a column written by Hoops on foxsports.com.au. So, Hoops, can you now take us through what's happened in the past 24 hours?
As always in rugby league, Ben, there's two very different versions of events. We'll give you the full story, which we covered last night, and we're just going to deal in the facts. So this is the timeline of events of how it's unfolded in the last 72 hours. George Williams' manager, Andy Clark, who works over in the UK, contacts the Raiders Monday evening. Can George please have a release at the end of the season? That's the third time that he has contacted the Raiders bosses this month to ask for a release. Don Furner, flatly, no, George isn't going anywhere. We're happy for him to go home at the end of the year. We'll give him 3 months off. 3 months, that's double the amount of holidays that any other rugby league player would normally get of 6 weeks. Fully paid, go home with your partner, have the baby over there, be surrounded by family. Tuesday morning, George picks up his phone, sends a text message, right, to the Raiders welfare manager. I'm not right today and I'm not coming into training. That prompts Ricky Stewart to pick his phone up. George, is everything okay? I want to check and just make sure that everything's all right. In the course of that conversation, George tells Ricky that he's not right and that he won't be right to play against the Roosters on Saturday night. As a result of that, Ricky hangs up the phone, walks into Don Furner's office. They have a conversation. They decide it's no longer in the best interests of their club or of George as an individual for either party to continue this relationship. And so they decide to grant George his wish and give him an immediate release rather than a release at the end of the season. Don then picks up the phone, rings George, conveys that to him. Everything seems okay until Don says, well, come into the office today because we'll get you to sign the paperwork today. It's finished. You can go home and be with your family and hopefully fix your homesickness. Now, that's where the issues have then began to arise from
the only thing in that we said last night, when I went back and looked at it as what we said compared to what he claims in his first word, capital as false, the only thing that was not quite right was we said he signed the release yesterday afternoon when in fact he was only offered the release.
So here's the tweet.
But the rest is all factual. The rest, and he's almost argued for you, Hoops, there without realising he's arguing for you.
Well, this part here, the headline of the article, whether or not he read the whole article, suggests that George Williams dumped the Raiders by text. So if he feels that he didn't dump them by text, then that's possibly.
Yeah, but Lara, if he hasn't read the article, that's on him.
Yeah, but he's saying he texted the club about his mental well-being.
And that's what we said on the show, and that's what Hoops said in his article. I mean, that's without dispute. So you are right. If he's read the headline, then that's what he's reacted to. But that's why you've got to read the story. It got just as fun after that. I'm assuming, did you not call from memory some action from across in the UK? John Bateman?
I gave Johnny Bateman a mention because obviously we've been down this road before. This isn't our first rodeo in terms of the Canberra Raiders and Fox League having a blue with players about players agitating and asking for releases. Let's go back 12 months. It was Johnny Bateman. Oh, no, it was BS then. Cue ball. I think there were turd emojis, baldy, stop making stuff up, stop talking garbage, all the usual hullabaloo. But lo and behold, what ended up happening there? Well, Johnny Bateman's no longer at the Canberra Raiders and he ended up getting the release that he was agitating for, and now he's back at the Wigan Warriors. George Williams is now the next player who's been given his release.
I'm struggling to see what George Williams is upset about, OK? Like, the factual error, OK? We've acknowledged that. But big picture, what's he upset about? He's been agitating for a release. The Raiders gave him the release. It was unexpected to him, but it was still the release that he was been seeking several times, 3 times this month, and had previously over the summer sort. Like, he's got the release he's after. What's he upset about?
I'll tell you what he's upset about. What he's upset about is...
that it's effective immediately?
Correct. So that means that he gets his paycheck, right? And then the money dries up from that
But
point
would you
onwards.
respect
he
George
was, hang on,
Williams?
Paul, just let me. He was happy to let the club know he didn't want to train, he didn't want to play, but he still wanted to get paid.
And still
In
want to
what
stay at the
other-
end of the year.
In what other line of work?
To the end
There's
of the
not a lot of
season.
lines of work that would be acceptable.
100%. And this is the issue. He sits there and, to be fair, he hasn't set the world on fire because everybody's been trying to give him a hug and get him going and get him over this homesickness, which is nobody's been able to do. The club's tried, his teammates have rallied around him. No, it's clearly affecting him.
Well,
so the Raiders have said, you know what, let's make a call.
Gareth Widdop came to the Dragons at the beginning of the year when he asked for a release, but he stayed that whole year. They said, right, we can see that this is not where you want to be, but please stay this whole year. And
Which is what the Raiders did with George Williams and released him a year earlier.
No, they didn't. They were going to make him stay till the end of his contract, which is to the end of next year.
No, they had said they were going to let him go at the end of this year. John Furness said that again yesterday.
No, I need to go home for a 3-month holiday.
Sorry,
so perhaps if... I don't know. Obviously, he's agitating to know where his future lies.
But what about his manager ringing up Sydney clubs saying he wants to live near the beach?
Yeah, this is a critical point, and this is why I wrote the column that I wrote today, was over the course of the summer, and when it first emerged at the beginning of this month, Lara, that George Williams was homesick, I started to pick the telephone up, speak to people, and a couple of people at rival NRL clubs said, homesick, is he? And I said, well, that's what he's told the Raiders. I said, well, that's funny because his agent was ringing around clubs over the course of the summer saying he wants to get the full Australian experience. He'd love to live closer to the beach, and he's not the biggest fan of Canberra. So there's a couple of very different versions of events doing the rounds. Now, in relation to mental health, it's important that we point out mental health is a deadly serious issue. Not for a millisecond is anyone on this show or anyone involved with Fox League or Fox Sports suggesting that it isn't.
No, I agree. And, you know, there's a difference between being homesick and mental health, and it's important that when anyone provides a commentary on this, player, coach, player manager, whoever, that there's a clear delineation made, because this to me was about George Williams wanting to return home and being homesick, and because it didn't happen in the form that he wanted it to happen, which is at the end of the year, where while he was homesick, he could have days off training and perhaps not be right to play games because he was homesick, and they chose to do it effective immediately, that he's now kicking cans. Now, that he has every right to express his views to his club, but his club also has every right to say, well, look, if this is how you're going to be while you are in our employ, then we might have to make some tough decisions ourselves, which is effectively what the Raiders have gone and done. But this is... You cannot shy away from the fact that this has left the Raiders in a mess. And the other thing that compounded it for me is that overnight on social media, after George Williams posted what he said, which is the club has kicked me out, he posts his statement, and these are the people who then went on and liked what he had to say about the fact that he was kicked out of the club. I mean, what's going on down there?
I just think that's groupthink mentality. Blokes get out and see their mates posting it. They don't actually think the situation through. They just... Social media is...
A sewer.
But it's widely misunderstood by a lot of... misunderstood and misused. Just backing each other up.
That's two mates defending their mate. I can understand that. Are you reading that differently, or...?
Well, did they read what he said? Are they supporting him? Are they kind of supporting his views against the club?
There's 10 names there. There's probably 4 different things they're supporting between the 10 of them.
You can't just move away from the fact that the season's been a shambles, and whether chucking George Williams out of the team is going to fix that, because you've already had Josh Hodgson...
Hang on, Lara, sorry, just on that. They haven't chucked him out.
OK,
he has,
but not effective immediately. Yeah, but not effective immediately.
So the clubs put the club first.
Lara, the other way to see that is that the club put the club first. Yeah. And when every team... all the great teams talk about culture and being part of that system.
But did they handle it the right way?
Well, I think if you've got a guy walking around kicking stones at training all the time...
But they've had him apparently kicking stones for 3 or 4 weeks, and they're hell-bent on keeping him there.
As they tried to fix it up, as they tried to fix the problem, and they put people around him, they had him there.
I would say
and they realised it was not going to be fixed, so they said, you know what, we'll give you your wish, and rather than wait till the end of the season and go home, we'll send you home now.
I would have to say that the breaking point would be for the club, that when you are communicating because of your homesickness that you're not right to train and you're not right to play as an elite footballer, an elite athlete getting paid a seven-figure amount, then it's time for employer and employee to part company, which is what the Raiders did. Can I just say, Raiders legend Gary Belcher spoke yesterday and he was very strong on this Williams issue.
First up, I'm filthy. George Williams wants out of his contract. I understand. Yes, you're homesick, George. You've signed a contract, though. You're going to leave your club in the lurch. I don't know. I'm so uncomfortable with players that want to get out of their contracts. But now that I believe they say, no, we don't want to go now. We want to go at the end of the year. We're really homesick. Oh, but we can get through and you can keep paying us for another 6 months. Can you have your cake and eat it too? If you're going to leave and you're going to leave the club in the lurch, you should be leaving now.
Yeah.
My wife and I just married, moved to Canberra. That's a long way from Brisbane. We went to Canberra. And there's players in every club. Sure, this is across the other side of the world and there's been dramas with COVID. But we made a massive sacrifice. My wife's mother passed away the next year and all she wanted to do was be at home. But, you know, we'd made the sacrifice and we stuck it out and we didn't know how long we were going to be there for and we ended up staying there for about 8 years. Well, I think if you sign a contract, you see it out. Or if it doesn't suit you, well, you can't go, oh, look, I'm going to hang around for a little bit longer, keep paying me. Leave. Go.
So Gary Belcher, speaking from his own experience there, having come down from Queensland and clearly went through some tough times early on. So this is, I think people accept that he could be doing it tough, but what a lot of fans and people inside the club, I'm assuming, have made this decision about George Williams, that thinking to themselves, you know, we just need you to push through this.
Well, that's the way.
And he signed a 3-year contract. He's being paid, or he was going to be paid, nearly $2 million over the course of that contract. The Raiders paid a $200,000 exit fee to get him released because he was still under contract with Wigan when they initially brought him out here. They also did that with John Bateman. And this is how they repay them, Lara.
Yeah, but you open up any sporting book, nothing great comes without sacrifice. That's the fact of it. Now, he hasn't been able to handle it. Look at the Warriors. They've all, as a club, they've picked up and moved country themselves. And
a few of them, in fairness, a few of them did have issues last year and some went home.
Some went home, yeah. That's fair enough. But they've also, many last year, this year they've been able to bring their families out with them. George Williams has got his partner out with him. The Warriors didn't have their partners with them in many cases last year. Left them home in New Zealand because the kids were still in school and all the rest of it. Oh, it was heartbreaking for them, but they toughed it out.
I'd like to know what it means for the football fans from here on in for the rest of this season, because it's been from one disaster to the next in terms of the rumblings that have been coming out from there with Josh Hodgson. Obviously, the John Bateman thing was in the season before, but you've got Ryan James coming out telling everyone to stop picking on George Williams, and it's clearly going to be having an effect on the team internally. And do they just say the season's gone now and it's written off? That's how.
No, they don't say that. They're not going to give the season up. They're going to go and do their best and fight and battle and hope they scrape in and hope they get into the finals with some momentum.
It's incredible.
But it's going to be tough.
There was a picture.
They've lost their first-string halfback.
There was a picture doing the rounds today from Christmas where I think Ricky Stewart hosted. There was a stack of players there. It was most of the English players.
The English guys.
Tom Starling was there as well, and there it is. They're all at Ricky's house. This is Christmas Day. George Williams, he doesn't look too homesick to me there. So it's incredible to think that here we are 5 months later and the wheels have come off this quick. And it's not just, to your point there, Lara, it isn't just the George Williams issue. We have seen some other spot fires flare up over the course of the last couple of months.
And that's what they need to get to the bottom of now, the Raiders, is why it's falling apart. Why someone's homesickness has been exaggerated to the point where they want out and there has to be releases.
Or vice versa. Last night we sat here and talked about South Sydney and how the distractions of the halfback and the coach could be enough to knock them off their
onto
pattern,
tilt.
You know what I mean? A homesick halfback, your chief playmaker, that could be enough. These things filter through. That's a distraction that the Raiders have had to deal with. They've known he's homesick. They've tried to rally around him. You look at Penrith, who are operating. The only thing that can knock Penrith off this year is something outside where they're at. comes into influence. But at the moment, they're doing such a brilliant job of just being focused on their footy, playing great footy every week. All you're hearing out of Penrith is about how great they're going as a team and the camaraderie and all
I think this
this.
speaks to a bigger issue, though, Panty. It's not just the number 7. There clearly is an attitude or a problem within the whole.
Well, it started with John Baton. It's extended to George Williams.
Yeah.
Josh Papali called for a week off. I mean, we had the Joseph Tarpanay issue, and Josh Hodgson's apparently on his way out of the club. So you wouldn't be doing your job.
We all expected this team to be in the 4 or in the grand final. I had them in the grand final.
Had them in the grand
so why is it
had them in the top 4.
that this is all? I know that they've got a homesick halfback, but how has it all fallen apart so badly?
To the Josh Hodgson point, like Josh Hodgson went and had a meeting with Sticky and was blowing up about the fact that he felt as though there was information being provided to NRL 360 and then views were being relayed on here,
and I don't know that
which
these
were deliberately and specifically
these
pointed
columns would
at
feel
him.
like the same thing's happening.
Well, but the point I was going to make there, Lara, on the flip side was I find it amusing that all these players are jumping on social media and starting spot fires left, right and centre. So, sorry, who's the one who's leaking information and who is it
Are they
who's
responding, though, to
trying
those
to control
things?
the agenda?
Well, yeah.
I'm confused.
Well, I would say that they're sticking up for their teammate.
I would say at the end of the day,
That doesn't make it right.
this lands at the feet of the CEO and the head coach to fix. They need to get to the bottom of why the Raiders have landed in this mess. It can't be all on the players because to your point about Penrith...
And that's why they made the hard decision they did
that's
yesterday.
my point. Do you think it might have started yesterday with saying to the halfback, right, you know what, mate, time to go?
Yeah, I get that they made the tough decision. How about creating... How about creating an environment where a halfback wants to turn up at training despite his homesickness and play that same weekend?
Well, and that depends on the strength of... That depends on the strength of George Williams' problems, doesn't it? They've tried to do that.
And the strength of the environment.
They've spent well, that's true.
And relationship with Cody goes both ways. And all I said was that the CEO and the head...
both ways, acknowledge it goes the other way as well.
I do. So that's what the head coach and the CEO need to get to the bottom of.
And that's what
Who
I'm saying.
is responsible?
Maybe they've already done that, and it began yesterday by saying, you know what, we're not going to fix this bloke's problem, so we will let him go home now before it becomes a problem that gets worse. Why would you... If this comes out right, that he's asked for a release again, he can't turn up to training yesterday, he can't play this weekend, the Raiders don't do anything, they say, mate, good as gold, sit at home, sort yourself out, come back when you're ready to play football. He sits down for, 2, 3, how many more weeks do you want? And then he gets to that point. Meanwhile, they go, lost, and everyone looks back and says, mate, maybe that week when he first sat down and said, I don't want to turn up to training, was the week they should have moved him on then in a bid to start fixing the joint.
Maybe they should have, and that's the question you need to ask.
That's what they've done.
And maybe they should have asked the question last year when John Bateman was agitating. Maybe that question should have been answered the right way, and it should have showed...
How long's a piece of string then?
Hang on, what are you saying there? What question should they have asked? They should have gone to George Williams and said,
They need to
"Are you
understand
unhappy as well?"
how the club arrived at this point. And that means multiple questions about what's happening inside the footy program need to bubble to the surface.
It's a variety of factors, though, Ben. It's not necessarily just one sole issue. Clearly, as we've just gone over, there's multiple
did I not
problems.
start this conversation with the fact that this lands at the CEO and the coach now to find out why they have arrived at this point? Sure, that they might have stumbled on something that meant they had to part company with George Williams, but it's deeper than that. It's beyond George Williams.
Yeah,
there are multiple issues.
I think that has begun, and I think the Raiders are in a bit of a revival. Now,